build must actually affect the meta today, or it is a time for the control deck to actually shine in the actual meta? Well, this is something that we're gonna be answering in today's DBT10 tier list video. But before we get into it, I have a few words to say before that. First of all, for those who did come to visit the channel for this type of video, thank you so much. Really glad that you guys willing to watch almost an hour of content just to see someone's tier list. You know, that's something I'm really grateful for. And secondly, well, this is just more towards for the newer people who do not know me personally. Anyway, if you are first time here, welcome. And I decided to just make a proper rule guideline on what I'll be doing for my tier list in general. So first rule is there's no collab deck list in this tier list. This is due to the fact that I feel it's unfair to just represent the entire nation with just one deck list that keep topping in everywhere in the world, and also some collab nation does not come to the Japan or vice versa as well. Secondly, there is a limited option in the tier list for the higher ones, namely S and A tier. This is for me to separate great deck from good deck, because let's be fair here, a lot of lower tier deck can beat the higher tier deck, but the main difference with those is that the quality of the support is very different. Some actually fix the issue and actually push the deck and beyond. Some actually just fix it but doesn't improve the deck beyond that. So for S tier, 3 and 3 only, and for A tier, 10 and 3 only. So last but not least, this is based purely on my experience as a card fighter. So I have play tested it through the stream, online, offline, and also I have play against those decks before, so the ranking I'm putting on this deck are based purely on my experience of those decks. So if you guys have a different experience for it, do leave down in the comments below and be very civil about it. And last but not least, don't forget to clap the subscribe button, as it will help me tremendously. And without further ado, let's start off with our orientation for the brand new decks. Starting off the tier list, we have the very OG Messiah. And to be fair, I already made the whole video talking and analyze Messiah as a deck already. So I'm gonna leave it to my past self to explain what are the best point of Messiah and the weak point of Messiah. The pro is extremely obvious. Just like Chrono Jet, it being a strike deck means that it has a huge late game power potential thanks to the crest, and not only that, it does have very consistent draws thanks to Alter Ego, and multi-attack thanks to cards like Kalusa Climb and Arrestor Messiah. However, the deck also does have its own issue, and that is the fact that you do need lock cards to actually facilitate. And because of the fact that you do need lock cards to facilitate those, control became extremely scary for this deck because it doesn't have a lot of ways to get a lot of breakout in short period of time. So controls actually affect both offense and defense of this deck heavily. And being a strike deck means that if it's going first, it's just gonna hurt the deck quite a bit, because that means that you get your base card, which is Excellence, one turn later. And with all that considered, I'm gonna put Messiah in a very good off head start in the top of A tier. With all the points I have said already, the deck can do all the positive point of the deck very well, but it just holded back by the reliance of the lock card. But compared to the other entry in the A tier, I would say his consistency is technically the best among all of them. Moving on to the second entry, we have Gandiva. And Gandiva, in my opinion, has a very interesting position in the current meta right now, mainly because he has ability to consistently mass retire rear guards and does have enough resource to kind of pump into his power as well. And I would say one of the biggest plus of Gandiva is just simply the fact that his card either retire or draw, which is actually quite a good thing, and that's something that a lot of consistent deck actually wants. And with all that considered, I had to put him in the A tier, but in the mid of A tier, so later he will be going down. This is just mainly due to the fact that he does have two prevalent issues that kind of plague him quite a bit. The first one is, of course, his skill can whiff, and this is something kind of pertains to just Cardfight Vanguard as a game, because you know it's a TCG, so luck does play a factor into him. But I do run into a situation where Gandiva brick a lot more often than any of the deck that I will be putting on top of him. The other problem that he does have, and that's not him being a 3 attack deck, is the fact that the deck that he counters, which is essentially all the deck that does populate field quickly, also counter him back. And this is why I said Gandiva is a very interesting specimen, in the sense that Gandiva both counters and also weak to the deck he is specialized in countering in. So with all that considered, mid A tier, I do feel is a very good position to put him, especially as a newbie of a deck. Then we have last newbie, and that is Soliron. And I'm gonna say this outright. Soliron at the moment is a little bit iffy, but still playable. You see, his deck has, I would say, very solid power gaining, as well as consistent multi-attack. And also, he does have deck manipulation. But the problem boils down to mainly two reasons. His multi-attack is RNG. It's like what if you use a Z as a boss unit in Keter, and that's kind of like Soliron. RNG multi-attack is not a bad thing, but it can definitely run into a situation where you needed that particular key card the most, but it doesn't come out. And that's lead into the second issue that I have with Solarian, and that is key cards. The deck do rely on a good number of cards to actually shine very brightly. So because of that, if you ran out of those bullets in the deck early game, you definitely will suffer later part of the game due to the fact that you do not have good rear guard in your deck to actually superior call. But overall, I do still think Solarian is a very solid deck. It's just that I do think he does need something very solid to actually improve his performance right now. And that is all entries for the newbies from DBT09 to DBT10. And moving on to the deck that did get a specific support in DBT10, we have Nirvana Jiva. And I'm happy to say for all the Jiva mains, it's time for you guys to rise, because man, Jiva support is great and it actually makes the DBT09 support looks good. This is due to the fact that the deck always has a biggest issue of resource in terms of counter blast because of how much offensiveness the deck can bring to the board. But now with Mirror's Variana and also to an extension Grelu Miller, this makes the dual dress playstyle a lot more easier to play, and now you have enough cost to actually go through all the combo pieces that you need. And because of that, Jiva immediately unlock what has been kind of hidden behind a high paywall for a long time and finally come into the light in a very good way. But the deck still has its own issue, as it's still having a lot of investment you need to go through before you actually unlock that full potential that you are looking for. It is still a very combo heavy deck that requires quite a number of resources to actually go into, but I do say that now it is actually worth going into those units. The only reason it didn't go into A tier, to me, it just boils down to that there are decks that can take advantage of high rolling better than him, and that should be a clue to what deck I'll be talking about. Moving on to Dark States, we have 3 different decks. And let's get one out of the way, because Wyman's unfortunately gets some good cards but didn't really improve that much. Let me explain. Patrick and Heidi are actually a really powerful cards, but it doesn't fix the parent issue of Wyman's in a sense that Wyman's lacks draw power that doesn't have like weird ass condition or hard to pull off condition. These 2 cards doesn't fix that, but it does give you a really strong Diablo Lost record for the deck to use. And with all that considered, I will still leave him at where he was, which is with mid A minus tier if I remember correctly, until he gets a support that actually relevant to fix his issue. I would say his playstyle more or less still stuck there. So until I see a card that actually fixes the draw issue that this deck has, I can see Wyman's kind of just stuck in the paradox of A minus hell. Okay, moving on to Unica, or I would say Asteria or Almagesta. I would say they suffer the same issue. They introduce new units that actually introduce a different playstyle, which is not a bad thing. But the problem is that they haven't even fixed the main problem that Almagesta already suffered to begin with. Giving Baiko to Unica is actually not a bad decision, but I do feel it's a little bit too early for the deck to get something along that line. I'm fully aware this is anime plot, so I'm gonna close one eye for that reason. And the biggest issue of Almagesta right now is consistently gaining a good amount of soul. Yes, the deck do have cards that can burst give a lot of soul back into the Vanguard, but the problem is that most of those cards are usually on place, so you have a limited amount of resource to actually soul recover. And yes, I know there is cards like Turandina, but Turandina is a little bit too expensive to use the effects. But the deck do have potential, as if there are more cards that actually synergize well with the playstyle of both Baiko and Unica more, the deck will actually get better over time, and we already start seeing this with Crucial Dragon. And if there is a card that fixes Unica problem that doesn't really cost arm and legs, I can see the deck actually get improvement. But for now it stagnates, but it shows high potential. Then move on to the deck that does get some improvements, but I have to say its improvement is not good enough to keep it in the A- tier, and that is Dragewell. Personally for me, the problem with Dragewell kind of boils down to the same problem that Jawa used to have, and that is overly used amount of Counter Blast has to be used, and also for this case, Soul Blast as well. And Dragewell Mask does bring nothing to fix the issue. Disappointed! But it does introduce some different way of playing Dragewell that actually make it better. But unlike Baigo, the potential is much lower, and I can see that this card will eventually be replaced with a better card in the long run. And because of that, with a heavy heart, I have to bring down Dragewell by 1 rank. But to be fair, he is also still the highest in B tier, so it's just that I feel the potential of the deck improving is kind of low at the moment. Moving on to Keter Sanctuary, there is only one deck that did get a specific support in this set, and that it takes her off with her brand new form, Aquamarine. And how good is she? Well, in my honest opinion, depending on build, it is a very solid contender at the bottom of A tier.
I do believe I'm on fire.
Okay, to be fair, she got pushed up by 1 rank because there's only 9 decks that I want to put at first, so she happened to be at the top of A-, so she got bumped by 1 rank. So why I think Hexa Orb became so strong now? Well, it just kinda boils down to the way they play around with her new form. For one, now you no longer need to run cards like Lalita, as Hexa Orb herself will give a restand. But I would say that that is more than enough, because her second skill, the Personal Focus skill, changed the trigger effect from 10k to 20k while giving herself a free drive. These are more than enough to give the deck a disgusting potential level. Because of the way it is text, this means that if you pull a front trigger, the entire front row gets 20k instead of just one unit only gets 10k like the original. And not only that, over time the deck gets better at filtering through cards like Quad Tier Sorceress, I confirm butcher her name, Effusion, which is a really good card that came in this booster,
and Pentagram Sorceress.
And personally for me, the reason why I want to rank her so high in A- tier in the first place was the fact that the potential that she can high roll is insane. Like, she takes advantage of high roll extremely well. The only thing I would say is better than Hexa Orb at the moment is Gravidia, in terms of the high rolling aspect of it. So overall, I feel that Hexa Orb is definitely one deck that a lot of people sleep on. But now I dare say, Hexa Orb main, your time has come. Okay, then move on to Stoicheia. We have 2 decks in particular, Zoga and Linon. Well, unfortunately, both decks didn't get a huge shift in their ranking, though Linon did get a huge rank up. So for Zoga, I feel he is currently better than Wyman's, mainly due to the fact that Soga Mart was such a great card. I won't be going through full detail because I just released recently a brand new video talking about the Master Unit in general, so if you guys do check that out before I come back to this video. And to put it quickly for you those who don't, Soga just make Alchemagic much easier, and it take advantage of those Alchemagic much better. And not only that, the deck also get additional attack, meaning that you can exert a lot more pressure on top of the roaming prison dragon. So overall, I would say Soga is kind of like Eva, but a lot more bricky due to his own playstyle of focusing on normal order. Then what about Linon? Well, Linon, I would say she definitely get a huge lift up in the form of Linon Mask. From 4 attack deck into 5 attack deck is actually very good, but I do feel that one problem that the deck do have is the fact that defensive trigger can shut the deck down very easily. Yes, I'm not saying that the result is a bad thing because there is cards that actually fix the issue, but I do feel that a defensive is something that you can't really fix it, and Linon do have some cards that help to fix the issue, but it does come at a very specific cost as well. And because of that, I do feel Linon is getting definitely became better, but compared to the higher tier deck in this list, it's definitely fall short when it comes to power level. Then we move on to Bracket, and technically there are 3 decks, namely Office, Prison, and Avocado. I mean Vanguard. And let's start off with Vanguard, and personally for me, Vanguard gets slight boost because his attack potential became better now thanks to the promos and the highway and essentially lots of support that was released in this booster. But the base problem of him right now is the fact that his turn 3 is bad because he needs to hit to get advantage, and I feel like it would be more fun if he can use more than one tactic into soul per turn. So if there's a card that allow Avagant to actually use that kind of effect, that would be great. That would be a huge improvement. But for now, the new support that he did get did actually improve his performance enough for him to get a slight shift in the tier. Not up though, just a slight shift. Then move on to Office, and Office, I would say Hazardable Zone kind of fixed the deck because Hazardable Zone allow you to play more than one order within the same turn, and also Hazardable Zone help to filter out one card from deck, which is the set order itself. So with all that considered, I do think Office get his position back in the A tier. He didn't get higher because of the fact that his defense is still a big issue, even if with Hazardable Zone, because Hazardable Zone is a turn 4 card. Then moving on to Prison, and to be fair, I'm gonna put Prison in like 9th place in the A tier, and purely because of how strong Pure Light still is. Like, Pure Light is still one of those cards where it aged very well over time, but the deck doesn't. The problem with the deck right now is that the turn 3-4 Seraph is kind of bad right now. Even if the new support is not able to kind of fix the base issue that the deck has, you can only do Prison. You cannot do any big pressure more than just a single unit with 3 drive, and that's about it. And that is definitely a problem with the deck, though I would say that she definitely got off easier than her other grade 4 counterparts, and by that I mean the starter 5, as she is still definitely relevant because of her ability to control extremely well while getting a lot benefits from it. Now we are moving into decks that didn't get a direct support in the booster, but did get some improvement because of some of the generic card that was released. So starting off with Dragon Empire, we have Maha Nirvana. And to be honest, for me, I would say Maha is still a very solid deck to play, but I would say that its playstyle is definitely dated, and mainly due to the fact that its main point is consistent power while swinging lots of attack or get high power through cards like Escuridia. But the problem kind of mainly to 2 reasons. For one, the deck only calls Trickstar once per turn, and for 2, we are at the stage of the game where you rather have something that can swing for even higher power than just a power that can be get away with just one defensive. Moving on to Eugene, and well, Eugene is just being Eugene, so you know, always gonna be in the B tier perpetually until they fix the main issue with the Eugene. Yes, that he did get a specific support that kind of pertains to him, but you know, that's not the way to fix Eugene. In my honest opinion right now, the only way to fix the Eugene is either forcing the opponent to retire by forcing the card to call from hand to the card circle, or just directly retire from hand. That way Eugene can more or less still play despite being a reactive deck. Moving on to the Overlords, and I would say Overlord still stay as one of the best deck in the format, but it definitely gets considerably weaker compared to the other entry, mainly due to one reason: key piece reliant. You see, Overlord kind of rely on Elder Hatchet to get the full effect of the end out, and that can get very annoying when you can't really search for Elder Hatchet. Then we have Baksavgra, and where do I put Baksavgra, you ask? Well, I'm gonna put her above Finance. Okay, so here's the thing about Baksavgra in my opinion. Baksavgra get a huge boost in DBT09 in terms of the consistency, but now it kind of stuck mainly due to 2 reasons. For one, they do need to pull the card that help them to get the arms, or the arm card itself to get to full power potential quickly. And secondly is the deck is kind of a 3 attack deck. I would say in the case of Baksavgra, the power level is not high enough for it to be relying on just like 3 attack just like that compared to decks like Ganiva. So I would say that if Baksavgra needs a boost, I would say either something along the line of Q Severing for Zorga, or something that allows Bug to get even more power so that it just to give the opponent hard time to guard in general. Then we move on to Tamayura, and to me, still one of the most overhyped deck around. The last few entry of Dragon Empire, I have been talking about the fact that a lot of them do have a key piece reliant problem. This is the ultimate form of that. Tamayura rely on way too much cards to make the deck work, to an extent that it became a burden instead of a bad thing. But I'm not gonna say the Tamayura is a bad deck, because I think if you build right, the deck is still good. But I would say overall the average power level is still bad. Also, one more thing, one defensive can shut down Tamayura quite easily, even with the 15k Pesana boost. So yeah. Okay, moving on to other Dragon Empire deck, we have Shoujo Doji. and Shoutout in my opinion will be the very first deck to go into C tier. The main reason for that is because Shoutout did get some support, but I do feel that the payoff is still kind of weak at the moment. So Shoutout definitely has some plus and minus, but at the moment his plus are not shining in the format yet because it just counter one deck only. Moving on to the very last deck of Dragon Empire, and that is Megalonosuji, and this will surprise you guys. I think this deck is definitely one of the most menacing deck in the format right now. The only reason why you don't see a lot of representation in Japan or in West is because the card is quite hard to find. The boss unit itself is quite annoying to get, so not a lot of people actually willing to play it. But it is definitely a very devastating deck, boiled down to mainly two reasons. For one, this deck has zero keycard problem because Shoutout right line can more or less just filter out all the cards you need by second turn. Secondly, the deck can filter quite a lot. Because of the fact that it can be treated as multiple names, you can more or less just call any card that is not a trigger from your deck. And even the trigger itself, cause I think some of the triggers also has stealth in its name. And last but not least, it is a Magnolia with a proper offensive capability. Unprecedented is like made for this guy, especially if you play the deck properly. Okay, let's move on to Dark States. And Dark States, we starting off with Violence. And Violence in my opinion is dropping harder than my wallet sometimes.
Emotional damage!
So I will put him just above Eugene. The thing about Violence is that it's a turn 4 deck. Regardless of whatever the hell you do, it always be a turn 4 deck due to the way his Final Rush activates. And that holds back a lot. Yes, Bruce did get a turn 3 card like Julian and Diarrhea and all those cards, but I would say that these are not enough to actually lift the Violence from the position that it's already in. The only way I can see the deck actually getting better is the deck gets something like Amelia that does help to activate Final Rush as well. If that's the support that the Bruce will get, I can see his playstyle go even higher than Wyman's because his rush potential is still one of the strongest in the game. Moving on to Barrow Magnus, and I have to say it is definitely dropped off a bit, but not as bad as a lot of people think it is. And it kind of just boils down to one reason: Lilac Rusher. Lilac Rusher allows Barrow Magnus to be able to swing for a really high number, forcing the opponent to guard a lot more than they wanted to. Because initial problem with Barrow is that it can consistently swing 5 attack, but if 1 or 2 defensive can shut it down. But thanks to Lilac, that is not the case anymore. But the deck also have quite a high requirement, 15, so by now I would say it is quite a huge investment to put into because of the fact that the game is getting a lot faster. If you cannot get full power on turn 3
consistently,
I would say it is gonna be hard for you to survive in the current meta. Now let's move on to the boy, the drip, Gridon. And Gridon, in my opinion, is still in the C tier. Its playstyle is fundamentally flawed, though a few quirks that it does have does make it very unique. So there's not much to say here, but I will wait and see what Mask Gridon actually do for him, and whether it is gonna be a huge improvement for his deck or a huge downgrade just like the other Dusted Mask units. Okay, moving on to Chaos, and Chaos to me is, well, B tier I guess. I mean, it's a high roll deck. Like, as much as I'm a copium for Chaos, I am fully aware it is a high roll deck, and it's a high roll that if you can I get high roll, it is very scary. But if opponent high roll together with me, or like they out high roll you, the deck can get significantly holded back. And that's why I have to say Chaos at the moment definitely B tier, but I can see it's potentially going up higher because of the fact that we are getting the new form for the glitter as well. Then we move on to the other Dark States. We have Luquia, and Luquia is, to me, I'll put her in like A-, but to me Luquia kind of lack. The problem with Luquia is just that she cannot get full attack consistently. You either have to hard draw into order or put them into soul through one of the card effects. So at the moment there's not enough card to help to fetch out that order at the moment. But if there's a card that helps you to do that, I can see her deck potential go up quite a bit. But until then, she will definitely be one of those good decks, but just shied away from being great. Okay, next up we have Baphomedes, and Baphomedes we have, I'm gonna put him just above Bruce, I guess. His playstyle is actually quite easy to pull off, but the same reason with Megalonosuji, not a lot of people play because of the scarcity of it and the trouble to go through to get the full one playset of this card. But I can see that over time the deck will get a lot better, mainly due to the fact that Balfomides is one of those decks that mix well with the new supports, like all the cycle support. Balfomides seem to get along with them quite well. So because of that, I do feel Balfomides will slowly going up the position as there are more cards that help to play with his playstyle. Then we have Transrotor, and let's be real guys, Transrotor is a meme deck. As much as I love to play this deck, I'm fully aware this deck brought nothing other than power, and power gaining condition is a little bit iffy to pull off. So because of that, I can see a lot of people don't want to play this card. The last but not least, we have Fafnir, and I consider it to be in like the high B tier on the same level as Drudgeable actually. The only reason he didn't get into the A- tier to me is due to the fact that his cost is just too painful even with the release of the PR. And in case you guys don't know, the PR helped him to counter charge. But the counter charge amount is just not enough for his deck, and I have to say he needs more cards like that squid guy that can be treated at grade 4, that's why he being grade 2. Yeah, he needs more of those cards, and I think if he get those cards over time, the deck will definitely be more playable, and I can see the deck being one of the best in the format also. And yeah, that is pretty much for the Dark State tier, I think. I'm pretty sure there is no other deck that involve Dark States already. I'm pretty sure. Is there anything that I'm missing? I don't know, you know. I'm pretty sure I already take into account of every single deck of Dark States already. But yeah, let's move on to Keter Sanctuary. Bastion is still considered to be one of the best glass cannon deck in the standard format due to the fact that he is focusing on the grade 3 and he kind of hits really hard when it's in his hero time or something like that. But the biggest drawback of Bastion right now to me is the fact that it is a turn 4 deck. It is fine if it can rush on turn 3, but the fact that it has to go for on turn 4 to get to really powerful spot really hurts his deck a lot. And with all that said, I still think he's one of the best deck in the format around. I'll put him like here. I would say the only reason he got pushed back quite hard is just consistency issue and handbrake. Moving on to PBO, and there's nothing new to the PBO I would say, but at the same time the generic support does help him to an extent, but he doesn't really have a space to play the card. So unfortunately, I have to put him like kind of like in the middle of like the A- tier. But he's still considerably better than Balsabgra mainly because of the additional attack that he can get. And those attacks can get additional drive as well thanks to Kriduna. Then we have the other side of the same coin, the shitty one at that, and that is Majesty Lord Blaster. This card is immediately in the low B tier, and for one purely reason, the deck is just fundamentally flawed. It always needs you to have Blasted Away and Blasted Out on the field to activate the effects. Yes, they did introduce cards that fix the issue, but I would say this is not good enough. I do feel MLB as a boss unit is extremely undertuned, and because of that, its playstyle heavily affected by it. And it's kind of sad for me because MLB is definitely one of the most iconic units, but he gets close to zero love from Bushiro. Moving on to Tegria, and personally for me, Tegria has always been kind of like that prototype multiple cross persona right card, and she definitely show her age right now, especially we are comparing cards like Aquamarine and the upcoming dress up unit. She is definitely need a buff right now, and fortunately she will be getting in DBT 11, but until we know something about her, I would say she's definitely one of the deck that is good to bring into the tournament, but not good enough to get a consistent win compared to the other entry higher up than her, at least in my opinion. Then we move on to Yusberg, and after almost half an hour of talking, we finally get at least one S tier into the top list. Unfortunately, he's not the top one in the S tier, mainly because there is a better deck at the moment right now, but I would say Yusberg definitely has more or less consistently being one of the best deck in the format thanks to his overly excessive filtering. And also, most of the cards in his deck kind of like melded with him very nicely, though we start seeing him start to drop in terms of power level already. But most likely on DBT12, Usurper will get a new form, and that might change everything for the deck, but we have to wait and see. Minerva, in my opinion, is definitely one of the best deck in the format right now, and this is before considering the brand new promo that you'll be getting. She's still one of those decks where she can constantly push out a lot of rush to the opponent if they cannot pull the defensive, thanks to her ability to give the front row additional 5k. And I would say overall she's just very easy to use standard deck that can go into more multiple attack thanks to Camo Mount. Moving on to Grace. Grace definitely kind of fallen off after that rise in DBT09 into like A- tier. He's still a pretty damn good deck, but I would say that the problem with his playstyle is kind of just boiled down to two things. The first thing is that he is a full attack deck that does give a lot of power boost. This is one of those decks where power is not a problem for Keter, but the consistency can be a little bit iffy if you're up against a deck that can push a lot of rush into the deck. Though I would say that on the other hand, Grey also have quite a bad representation due to the fact that he do rely on a specific promos, and now there's two of them in fact, and those can cost quite a lot. So a lot of people don't really want to invest into Grace because it's not even considered one of the best deck in the format yet. Though we already confirmed getting his new support up in the upcoming like few months. So let's hope and see what Grace will be getting. And that is all for Keter Sanctuary. Overall, I would say, unfortunately, the cycle support doesn't really do much for the Keter. But for the Next Nation, that cycle card changed everything. And that is Vanguard. Her startable zone is such a disgustingly good card that it does fix a lot of issues that a lot of deck does have. And I can see a lot of the deck performance either more or less stabilized or manage to push them into a brand new height. So let's start off with the Gravidia, the Sotong, the OG, everyone hate it, and I have to say she's still holding it. She's still holding on being one of the best in the format due to how easy it is for her to get a win out of nowhere. And I would say that's the reason why a lot of people try not to run Gravidia, because it can make a lot of people rage very easily. But also the deck start to get slower as well, as the deck tends to get a lot stronger once you go into the Persona right turn. So it's kind of like soft lock to the Persona right, and it cannot really get full power by turn 3 now. So it definitely get pulled back a bit, but I do still consider it being one of the best deck in the format. Moving on to the real number one of this list, and that is Eva. Eva has over time kept being very consistent throughout the game and for a good 1 year already, and I only consider it to be one of the best deck only recently, mainly due to the fact that I wasn't really playtesting Eva a lot because I met a lot of Eva player, but I didn't even consider of playtesting it. But after playtesting it and discussed with the Eva main, I understand now how ridiculous her power level is. I know it's already good, I didn't expect it to be that consistent, especially during my WGP. 2 of my losses were from Eva, and those are high roll Eva, but I can see why now a lot of people were annoyed at me for not putting Eva at the top of S tier. So here it is. Okay, moving on to Hero, and Hero unfortunately did get a decent boost with Hazard Double Zone, but I do feel that it doesn't really boost his deck as much, mainly due to one reason: lacks of additional base. And I do think if he get additional base, he definitely can shine. Unlike the other deck that I'll be talking about later, the deck already can function well already, it just need more cards to scout, maybe something that can scout consistently, maybe a kind of base that actually can scout cards consistently, and I can see Hero actually be more playable. Then we have Velstra, and immediately for me, Velstra S tier 2nd place. To me, Velstra is just one of those decks where it's slowly but surely climbing up the place as one of the strongest decks in the format, mainly due to its consistent control capability and also a lot of quality support that he did get. The only problem with Velstra in my opinion is that if he got disrupt in any part of his flow, he definitely get hold back just a little bit, but he more or less can recover. The last two is of course the monster based right lines. We have Archive starting off first, and I would have to say Archive is definitely one of the best A- tiers.
デック、
And Archive to me is definitely one of the best tier 1.5 deck at the moment due to how much he searched and she actually can get a lot of power from it. The only problem I would say with her is that her core is RNG based. It's not as bad as Solarian or Gandiva as Alphazar because of the fact that it does check top 7 and she does have a lot of targets. But the problem with her, I do say, is that there's no monster that get additional crit for its effect or some kind of guard restrict, you know. So if she gets something along that line, I can see Archive being played a lot more. Archive will always hanging around in this tier because of how much support she will get indirectly because of the fact that she focused on the monster. And last, but personally for me, not least, Eridogramma, I have to put him like just above Eugene, I think, right here. Yeah. The thing about Eridogramma is that he now can play a lot more consistently with his playstyle thanks to Hazardable Zone, but it's still soft lock to Persona, right? So it did improve, but it didn't bring enough improvement to fix his playstyle. Oh, and also Assembler did fix the problem as well, but I do think that are not enough. He needs some kind of specific set order that allow him to activate his skill a little bit easier. Something like 3 discard at 3 tribute for discard skill or something like that. That would fix his problem by a lot. And I would say it is not broken, mainly due to the fact that you do have to send different names of the set order back into the deck to activate his skill. So that reduces the cost quite a bit, and I think that should fix him enough without making him broken. Moving on to the clan that have been kind of frustrate me in the recent months, and that is Stoicheia, with how correct the normal order support for them really is. And starting off, we have Magnolia, and this will surprise a lot of people, but to me, Magnolia is slightly stronger than Bastion. He's somewhere around this power level of like Barrow, Luquia, around this line because of the fact that he does have some inconsistency issue. Yes, Stoicheia support does help to search a lot more efficiently already, but I do feel that building the board with Magnolia is still a bit hard to do because of the fact that if you up against deck like Eva, you have to contribute your hand size to defense, and Magnolia asks you to contribute it to his offense, and that can get a little bit annoying, especially those intercepts are no longer applicable because of how high the power level can get with a lot of the higher tier deck. And because of that, I do feel Magnolia definitely get hit hard a bit because his era was cut short, and by the time he come back, a lot of deck already moved on to be a lot stronger by now. Then we have Flagberg, and this will piss a lot of people off. I definitely sumpa feel that way because I'm putting him in the top of A tier. I'll put him like behind the Minerva, I would say. Like Minerva definitely feels better than Flagberg already thanks to the how much recovery she can do as a Keter deck. Flagberg to me kind of stagnates after BT09 because they cannot release a better card for him. Because if they release a better card for him, that deck would be ridiculous because of his ridiculous guard restrict. And I can understand why they have to cater him a bit, but man, a bit frustrated because he is definitely disgustingly strong, used to be, but now he is kind of hard to fight against, mainly also because the power level of meta has shifted up and he couldn't go higher with them. Moving on to Lorua, I would still say I would put him under Bastion, mainly for this reason. He is a very powerful glass cannon. Like this is to me, if Bastion is like one of the best glass cannon, I would say Lorua is one of second best glass cannon deck, mainly due to the fact that his rush is ridiculous. But the fact that he can just chain into 3 attacks with Ready Lina and Momoke combo actually makes him really solid, and the fact that he can pull up on turn 3 is even more ridiculous. The only thing that kind of hold him back is because of the fact that if you cannot finish the opponent during that turn 3, your opponent will just clap back you hard and Roro can't really defend. Maelstrom to me, still low MNS here. To me, it's just like, how to say, Maelstrom is like Flagberg-like, but does have problem because it's a lot more balanced in terms of the way he generates resource and multi-attack. He can be a bit annoying to go around with because just a single defensive will shut down 80% of his attacks, and that can get very frustrating. Before you guys say anything, I'm fully aware High Tide exit, but High Tide is a turn 4 card. If opponent already able to rush from turn 3 onwards already, the chance of you able to pull off high tide without opponent able to defend it is quite low actually, and because of that I have to judge him a little bit harsher than Flagbird. Then we have the last Stalker deck at the moment, and that is our good boy Grand Fear.
What does the fuck say?
Grand Fear, to be honest, I do still think he's solid, but he's weaker than Meow. This is purely for one reason: control deck. And as we all know, there is one particular deck that is currently running rampant in the meta right now, and it does counter his play quite a bit. Especially Rainbow Rose token doesn't counter retire, and because of that, until they can give a way to protect Noble Rose or give a more consistent draw, I do think Grand Fear is a little bit limited at the moment, even with the brand new promo. The brand new promo is great, but I do feel it's not enough to fix the Grand Fear at the basic issue at the moment. Okay, moving on to a very last clan, -1, and that is really cool. Kairi, high A tier. She is still one of the best grade 4 deck in the format, but the fact that she is grade 4 held her back a little bit with the meta that is shifting faster. Roll in a row, low A tier, higher than these two. The deck is a fun turn 4 deck, even with the new support. But to me, I still think she has a very scary tank. She's still one of the best finisher in the game. Clarissa, low B tier. Until the new support come in, she does have problem of searching into Earth Connect unit, and until she get all those new Earth Connect unit, I do think the deck still have problem with the consistency. Alestial, right behind Clarissa. To me, the deck has a lot of fun factor and a lot of interesting gimmick that you can get around with, but that gimmick also screw you back really hard, even with the upcoming new support. So unfortunately for me, as someone who stand for Alestial, she's definitely one of the weaker deck in Lyrical right now. Willista, low C tier. This is before new Willista come out, so until that new card came out, she is gonna be in here. A lot of problem with her original playstyle that was fixed with the new support. Herminia, also C tier, high C. I do feel her playstyle is problematic to begin with, but I would say that over time she's definitely getting better thanks to all the most common support. Though I do feel that a lot of support also doesn't really mix well with her due to her playstyle. Then 4th tier, low B tier, just above Soraron. The deck still have a good rush. That's the best part about it, and the deck can set up the board a little bit better now thanks to the new promo card. Still one of the more problematic deck in the recall right now due to the fact that they seem to auto-tune her friend a little bit too much, as Bushiro seems to want her archetype to be more of an engine rather than a proper archetype. Felty Rose, this is pre-festival collection, so here. She is great, but I think the fact that you have to counter blast one for every additional dash check you want to use pains her deck a lot, even with Ingrid being in the deck. So until she gets her new form, low B tier it is. Ludicia, I'm gonna put her at like high A actually, like just right here. I would say these two decks are similar in power level, but I would say what makes Ludicia so strong is just how easy her mechanic is to play into the flow of the typical game of standard Vanguard. Only drawback of her deck at the moment is if you don't draw curse play, you cannot play. But the deck will search enough cards for you to get around it already, so it's not a big deal for her. Definitely one of the strongest recall deck in the format right now. Liufa, one of the shittiest deck in the format right now. I would say the biggest problem with her is that she requires so much attention to her board, and her payoff is a little bit lacking, and there are not a lot of units that can take advantage of those skills very well unless you're trying to go into the combo. Then we have Medial. Medial is definitely a low B, better than, I would say actually better than a lot of decks, mainly because of the fact that the deck is surprisingly self-sufficient now that I have tried it out for myself, and the promo does fix a lot of problems that the deck do have. Though the fact that the deck need to do Counter Blast 2 to facilitate everything can be a little bit annoying, but over time I have warmed up to this deck and the deck is actually better than expected. Moving on to Kyoka, in my honest opinion, the deck needs a new magazine to kind of fix a lot of the issue that the deck has. The magazine card is a very strong card, but it requires way too much very annoying complexity that the deck can kind of bring, but at the same time it does give you a nightmare of a deck building experience. So the deck kind of needs another magazine, either something to complement the original one or something that downright replace the card or some kind of searcher for the magazine. Until then, Kyoka is a little bit underwhelming at the moment. Moving on to Miju, one of the best critical deck in the A- tier. The only reason why she doesn't get into A tier just kind of boils down to the fact that she do require a lot of pieces to make it to work, and she do rely on your drive check luck a bit to actually get into base board of her skill. Other than that, I definitely say she will definitely get a very interesting support, mainly due to the fact that she is the part of the glitter archetype. Moving on to Hazerit, and I just played it recently, and I would say I'm surprised at how good the deck is, though the deck do have bits of problem. So because of that, B tier. It just boils down to the fact that the deck needs a bit more power. The deck is already quite strong in terms of power wise already, but I want the deck to get a bit more power, just like tiny bit, or something that can call into the back row center of the Vanguard after attack or something, or being bought into the bottom of the deck or something. Then I can see Hazerit being a little bit more scary as a deck. But at the moment, she is definitely one of the tankiest deck I have tried out over time. Moving on to Petraga, and I'm going to put in D tier for now, because I do feel like she needs another form of herself that being treated as the same name. Mainly because the restand effect, the recall effect is actually not bad, like it's an archive kind of skill. But I do feel if you want to play her a little bit more, you need a card that kind of play to her playstyle a little bit, and there are none of those cards exist yet. And last but not least, Gifogilla. Gifogilla did really get a huge boost in this booster, mainly because the brand new Dragon Tree card are just marker generator. So for those few builds, it works, but I can't really judge it as a good deck, mainly because of how slow Gifogilla really is. And I'm fully aware there are people who are doing a great job at like making a powerful deck that can last long enough for you to actually use the actual skill of Gifogilla. But the problem is that once you go above like medium A- tier, a lot of decks can more or less finish Gifogilla before Gifogilla finish them. And because of that, I have to say, unfortunately, Gifogilla, until there is a way for the deck to speed up the way to activate the OT, it is gonna be perpetually in B tier. And that is finally it for this tier list. That's a lot of deck list, doesn't it? But what do you guys think of my tier list? I'm fully aware it is far from perfect, especially some of the entry, so do leave in the comments what do you guys think. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. Take care of yourself, and this is McMegane signing out.